We're going to unpack what does it mean to be a social artist, who is a social artist, what do they do. We will also try and discover the creative community model. I feel it is one of the models that actually keeps all of our work with young people grounded. So this is going to be a super exciting conversation. If you work with young people, if you work in philanthropic spaces, if you are keen on learning about using the power of arts and performing arts, this episode is for all of you.
Shalini, thank you so much for inviting me to the podcast. I just think this is wonderful because there's so much that's not known about facilitation, and podcasts like these really help to tell the facilitator stories and get the word out about facilitation. I come from a family of teachers and educators on one side and entrepreneurs on the other. And I really can see how those two influences have kind of converged in a lot of the work that I've done over my life. And I would say kind of broadly, it's this work around kind of social innovation. When I was born, my dad was the principal of a school in a city called Hamilton, which is just outside of Toronto in Canada. And some of my very earliest memories were at his school. And it was before I even started, going to that school myself. And I just remember, being in classrooms and gatherings of teachers at our house. And innovation was a hot topic of conversation. This is back in the 70s. And I just remember, these teachers and my dad and my mom, for that matter as well, really involved in challenging, ideas in traditional education. So my dad was seeing kind of what wasn't working for young people in education. And he was really, his whole career in education was devoted to just doing things differently and doing things in a way that really responded to where these young people were at. I've always been lucky to have, jobs or have created jobs that have allowed me that kind of mobility. There's about 5 or 6 places in this world that I would really call home. And that was a journey also in and of itself for a long time to figure out where was home, for me as somebody who was in a bicultural marriage and family and not necessarily living in the country that I grew up. So it just meant that I became quite comfortable kind of switching, what they call like kind of code switching. And I didn't even actually know that was a thing until I was talking to somebody and they're, oh yeah, that's code switching. When from my Anglo-Saxon Canadian, environment to then more of a Latin Colombian environment to even the UK environment, that's where my grandparents were from. So it was, and I realized all the nuances and differences between British culture and Canadian Anglo-Saxon culture, which is the culture that I was brought up with. I think all of those things, it's like this big kind of like pot of soup with all of these ingredients that for a long time also, I kind of struggled with how to put it all together because there's a lot of ingredients in the soup and I just wasn't quite sure. I had a little bit like the recipe, but I didn't have the name for the soup.